Thank you for joining us on this episode of MTMG's IT Roundtable, where we engage key industry leaders in discussions about organizations coming together to solve problems. MTMG is a consulting firm specializing in bringing our industry veterans to guide your team to find solutions. As with the 4 points on the compass, we guide organizations with managed service solutions, fractional leadership, and mobile strategy development. But our true north is always to help. While listening today, don't stress about taking notes. We will include all the pertinent details in the show notes. If you still have questions, we'll include our email so you can follow up. So please, sit back, relax, and join us for this discussion.
Today's guest is Blake Wetzel, CEO of AuctionIQ, an MTMG partner and a procurement as a service consultancy. We discuss how his company aims to reduce enterprise spending across over 100 categories. Blake will share his career journey from Wall Street to leading AuctionIQ. He's a good man, and we hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. Joining us today is Blake Wetzel. He is the CEO of AuctionIQ, a vendor we are very happy to help bring to customers. And if I could start with a quick introduction, Blake, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and what was your career trajectory that brought you to AuctionIQ in the first place?
First of all, thanks for having me. Second, my career. I actually have a varied career. I started off my professional career on Wall Street. Those days where we all thought that Gordon Gekko in the movie Wall Street, I came out of college thinking that. So I started my career on Wall Street and moved to corporate finance. I worked my ways up, including having a role at Quest Communications as the head of corporate profitability, which was an interesting thing looking back to where I am today. But worked a lot of different roles in corporate financial planning and analysis, FP&A, up to a point where I was divisional CFO for a couple different divisions of Quest. But then I had an interesting career turn where we had a great leadership team who said, we want to cross-pollinate people out of one department to another. So I got picked up and I ran over and got moved over into a role of running customer care. So I got to understand what clients were going through. And that included everything from credit collections to actually doing everything from implementations with clients. So learned to work and love and understand the challenges that clients had, and this is in the technology space. Then moved over and actually ran alliances for the company, channels and alliances. So got that first venture into sales. So after 17 years at Quest, I ended up Quest, CenturyLink, and all the, I like to say it's derivation. I ended up and working on every merger, by the way, the company had in about a 10-year period of time. I was on the merger integration team of every one of those. I went over to Rackspace for a long cup of coffee, and then spent a year consulting and advising organizations on go-to-market strategies, et cetera. But then my last role before AIQ, I was the chief revenue officer and chief operating officer of a Canadian company who ran fixed wireless. So if you look at that, I've got CFO background, I've got CMO background, I've got COO background, I've got CRO background. So you put all those things together, and when the opportunity came, when I was approached by private equity to come over and run AuctionIQ, or we like to call it AIQ, I was like, this is the first time in my career I actually get to do all those things at one time. And it was really a kind of this culmination of a 20-plus year career of trying to make businesses more successful, more profitable, run more efficiently. Because that's always been the underpinnings of whatever role I've ever had, was to figure out how to optimize it. I'm an economist by education, so I like to figure out how to make things work better. So that was really the combination. And when the opportunity came for AIQ, I'm like, this is going to be a fun path. And it frankly has turned out to be a fun path. It's probably the most fun I've had in a decade working with it. And it's really because I have a fundamental principle of always wanting to help people. And in this job, I get to help businesses do things that it's hard for them to do. That's really how my career's led me here, and I think it's been a great path.
So, Blake, AIQ is a procurement consultancy, and I've heard you talk about procurement as a service. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
What AuctionIQ does is we're a turnkey solution working with large enterprises. So we do everything from evaluate what they're buying today and what they're spending their money on. We use market data that we compile, so not third-party market data, but this is market data that we actually own. We can evaluate it. We can quickly assess what that client has as an opportunity. And then we work as an extension with their procurement teams, or if they don't have a procurement team, with their finance teams or whomever is responsible for purchasing, in addition to their operations teams, to optimize what they're buying. Not necessarily recommending new technologies, but we optimize on how they purchase, why they purchase. And frankly, we have 3 patents, so we use that to help those clients get the best savings and buy what they need to buy in a different way. In traditional finance roles, you end up cut. What we're trying to do is say, no, you don't have to cut. You just have to buy it in a different manner, whether it's through negotiation or auctioning or evaluation of your processes or creating a market condition. So it's all of those things as an extension to an enterprise, so we can deliver an outcome and they don't have to have us there as a team forever. They're not paying salaries or anything. So we're really brought in as hired guns to help them reduce the expenses, and then we leave them off on their path. And a lot of times those clients bring us back again and again to do the same things, because those cycles of buying actually happen every 2-3 years.
That's really fascinating. And it's something very much in line with our go-to-market strategy, which is all about optimization and making the most of the investments they've already made. Our goal is not to come in and say, okay, well, you need to just yell at your current vendor and get them to sharpen the price. It's always been about how can you do what you need to do as a business, maybe in a little different way. So I think you've hit it right on the head there. But one thing you did say, enterprise technology, that's pretty broad. What categories of technology spend do you actually cover?
If we had about 3 hours, I could go through them all. Because we've been doing this for 20 years, that has grown through our clients. We touch over 100 different spend categories. I like to say IT and IT related. So we do everything from your traditional IT things, telecom, networking, unified communications platforms, cloud services. But we also do things that a lot of organizations don't do, hardware. That could be everything from simple laptops to servers to buying infrastructure. But then you get into the adjacency side, business process outsourcing. When you hire somebody else to do something, printing services, identity threat detection, software. You get into some really interesting areas like, I have fun with things like SMS. And new technologies are developing as people go. But you also get some of the things like that I would have never comprehended, such as background checks. That is an adjacent. So the IT organization has to go and connect with the organizations. If you're doing background checks for an apartment building to determine whether that client is, that's an extension of the IT team. So we do that stuff too. So it's 100 different areas, and it's growing every day. And frankly, it's even growing outside of the traditional IT space too. We have clients who've hired us for traditional IT, but then they go and bring us in for non-traditional, maybe commoditized services that we can go out. And our theory is if as long as you can actually build a market condition, get 3 or 4 suppliers who want to compete for the business, you can create a market condition. Oh, and I'll put my economist hat on again. You're creating a market condition. And that market condition helps drive that. So it's a very broad look. And part of our process actually is to evaluate everything before we jump into it, because there's a lot of areas that clients go, I didn't think anybody would touch this. And so we can touch this. We can actually go out and save you 15, 20, 30, and even up to 90% on some of these areas.
That's amazing. And so obviously people are looking at expense reduction when they look at AIQ. And I'll put myself in the CFO role and talking to AIQ, and I would say, how much money are we really talking about here?
It's actually fun because we have a little of a tagline, and we say unbelievable results ... delivered, because the numbers get very large. We're talking tens of millions of dollars. They can save tens of millions of dollars, depending on the size of the enterprise and what their infrastructure and what we identify, in a matter of weeks. It's a pretty severe number that organizations can see, but it is not surprising. We can see auctions, we can see events where we actually will get into saving a client 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 million.
Amazing.
So talking about outcomes, what do your clients do with those harvested expenses? Can you give us a few examples?
Yeah, it really falls into a couple big buckets. Number one, the one I like the most is help them avoid layoffs. Mm-hmm. They don't have to send people home. And that's a great thing. When I was a finance person, that was the worst thing in the world when we can't hit the budgets. It's okay, so let's start sending people home. That is the worst thing for an organization to ever want to have to go through. We see it a lot today. Mm-hmm. On the more interesting side, we get I put my Wall Street hat on and go, we just increase earnings per share. So the stock price goes up. We see this a lot with private equities and public companies. They're looking to continue to maybe stem a tide that's negative on their earnings per share so their stock doesn't go down. Or if they're looking to transact, actually on the other side, we work with companies that are looking to transact themselves. They're going to sell themselves in a year or so. So we can help them increase their valuation so they get a better price, right? On the more operational side, we've had clients say, hey, we need money to fund growth. We want to grow into new markets, new business lines, and we don't want to fund it. We don't want to have to go out to the investment market to go get money to make those builds. So that's a big area too. And another things are really just, hey, we have declining revenues and we want to adjust our cost to align with that while we try to turn that tide. So it's any number of different things. And that's one of the things we like to talk to clients about is, what are you trying to accomplish here? What are you trying to achieve? So we can understand that, so we can achieve it. That's not just on the dollars, but also on the time frames. They could say, hey, we need to get this done quickly. Okay, let's figure out the best path to get that achieved quickly.
You mentioned a couple of your client types, public versus private and so on. And every company has their ideal customer profile that they're going after. But what types of customers does AIQ work with best?
Yeah. The ideal customers are generally mid-sized to large enterprises. If we were to put a numerical side on it, we would say it's somewhere between, if they have revenues between $500 million and $10 billion. Now, I will tell you, when you look at our clients, if you go to our website, you can see former clients. We have clients that are in the hundreds of billions of dollars in revenues. We've worked with clients that are down in the close to 100 million in annual revenues. But there's that sweet spot, and that's generally because they have enough scale to be able to create that market condition, but they don't have probably this robust procurement infrastructure in place. So we can add a lot of value without creating internal conflict. We generally don't. We try to do anything we can to avoid conflict, but in a lot of cases, you get some clients who have territorial sides. So looking for those clients who actually have a real need for us and probably aren't going to get the other types of consulting firms, the big global ones who are actually going to try to help them in those areas. Verticalization, by the way, does not matter. People ask us all the time, where do you have a specialty? Having been in technology for 20 plus years, I find it interesting. I said, your vertical does not matter. You're buying some or multiple of these things just to run your business. Everybody is. It's just how much you buy, how much you need in your infrastructure. So there's a lot of organization that goes, oh, you've worked in airlines, but you've never worked in financial services. Well, no, but financial services still buys the same thing some airlines do. They just do it in different proportions and different scales and size and their models. So we really look at the client's need to be able to create that. So the vertical doesn't matter. It seems to be that's the most common question we get out of our exercise.
It really seems as though you can bring so much value above and beyond just the dollars saved to CFOs or CEOs or CIOs, allowing them the ability to avoid layoffs, allowing them the ability to add new services or products that they just couldn't fit into their budget otherwise. I think it's a fantastic thing you're bringing to the market. You've answered all of our questions, so I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to speak about before we wrap?
Yeah, there's a couple things. Number one, it's a little bit of our model. So we're a success-based model. So if we don't save you money, it doesn't cost you anything. So that's a very compelling thing versus traditional consulting where you're going to write really big checks for somebody to come in and tell you what maybe you already know, but you can't go implement, those types of things. The other thing I found very interesting in coming here, and I couldn't believe it but I kept on testing it as being a finance person. I wanted to make sure I could test the numbers. Is number one, we can do that evaluation by just getting an extract of your ERP. We do it for free for clients. You can do it in 2 weeks. Doesn't matter if you're a $10 billion enterprise. We can evaluate every spend you have, not just in IT, everything. We can pull it down, give you some reporting back that says, this is what you're spending on. Here's the categorizations. Here's where we think there's optimization. We can do that for free in 2 weeks. We do that because we want the client to understand what the opportunity is, but we also need to assess the client to say, can we add value? We don't want to go in there if we can't add value. The other thing I'll go back, I referenced earlier a little bit about our tagline, unbelievable results delivered. This is where I truly had to get comfortable with the company as I was joining it. Our average savings over the last 10 years for clients is over 44% reduction. We have clients all the time who say, there's no way you can do that. And I see it every day. We just ran a telecom auction for an organization and we saved them 60%. I have seen reductions at 90%, 75%. I've only been with the company for a little over a year. So you see some just daunting numbers into these organizations. The interesting thing is you start asking is, why would an organization go through this? Now they feel like it's going to be taxing. This goes back to that turnkey solution. We don't need their resources. We're not going to be a heavy touch into the organization. We can go deliver it. And by the way, the other thing I didn't mention is we go all the way to contract negotiations. We'll actually deliver an 80% done contract over to either it's procurement or legal, whoever's going to sign off on that agreement. So we're doing the end-to-end work for those clients. And we can do it anywhere, whether the expense is anywhere, whether the client is anywhere. We have clients from all over the world. We're actually working with a client right now from the UK. And we have just auctioned off some services that are actually, one's in South America, one is in India, and one is in Eastern Europe. So where the services are, doesn't matter. Where the client is, doesn't matter. Obviously, we have to do some coordination on time frames or meetings and things like that. But it doesn't really matter. We can touch anybody. And that's why it's such a great thing, because it's such a broad perspective. And we always deliver an outcome.
It is exceptionally interesting. And especially when you consider that if you're talking about a contingency-based service where if you don't deliver value, there is no charge, and you're adding in above and beyond the savings, but you're doing some of the contract work, you're doing some of the management of the entire process, that's an exceptional value.
Yeah. In addition to that, you get to all the other ancillary things, like when you're done, you'll get a better contract, which we all know most enterprises have a problem with where their contracts are, how they're written. We will make sure that you have best-in-class terms and conditions. We will always fight for those things for a client. So we hand them off a work product that allows them to go run their business and not have to go back and try to trace down where's the last contract. We will also, if they want us to, monitor that stuff and come back to them in 2 years, 3 years, and let them know that, hey, this is another area that you might want to go look at again. So we're trying to always keep the client's best interest in our minds and when we talk to them.
That is exceptional. I can't thank you enough. We're now at the section of our podcast where we call it the more than mere genius questions. Yes, we do love to brand things MTMG, more than mere genius. So these are just a set of questions that we'd like to get to know a little bit more about Blake, the person. So outside of work, what is an activity that you're passionate about?
I'm a big family man. So one of my favorite things in the world to do is I also like to golf. I'm not good, but I do like to golf. I work too hard. I'm never going to get a low handicap. I like golfing with my family. That is just absolute heaven for me.
That's great. Name one book, blog, podcast, or TED Talk that has inspired you recently.
Recently is a caveat, so I'm going to take the recently and throw it away. The reason I say that is there is a book that I consider myself a disciple of. It is called The Blue Ocean Strategy. It is from a go-to-market economics business approach. I really ask every one of my employees, every one of my team, take the time, read that book. It is enlightening when you actually start talking about it. So that's the number one. The other one, I walk in, and whenever I join a new organization, I buy boxes of this book and I hand it. It's the culture code. I am a firm believer, even though I have a finance mind and I'm a financial person at the end of the day and an operational person. But culture is the most critical thing for successful organizations. And really, the culture code is an incredible book purely because it talks about creating the right culture, a safe culture for employees to go and flourish. So those two books, I probably, if I opened up a drawer, I probably got copies of both of them because I love to hand them out. And I think it's good with just sharing knowledge. But those are the two books.
We'll definitely be listing those in the show notes on this. How do you stay up to date on the latest trends and technologies in the industry?
A couple things. Obviously, I talk to a lot of CIOs. I watch trends in the business and obviously news. But then I also like to research what they are and to dig into it. I was one of those interesting finance people who actually wanted to understand how the technology worked. I loved walking through a data center when I had data centers. So I'm constantly looking at the technology side of things and saying, how is this working? What's it doing? What's evolving? How are you moving from this technology to that technology? Why is this moving from A to B to C? And it's interesting because in the role that I am right now, we see that all the time from the economics side. We see these trends and shifting from one technology to another, or new entrants in the technology who bring new things. So it's great for me because I see a new entrant. When we build markets on things, we go, who is that? I've never heard of them. Let me go research them. Let me go understand what their value proposition is. So it's great because we touch so many areas here. I get to learn more and more every day. So it's really a multitude of different inputs into seeing what the technology trends are actually going towards.
Which talent that you don't have would you most like to?
It's an odd talent I wish I had, which is I wish I didn't care as much sometimes. I take everything very personally. I'm dealing with this right now with a client. I see some really bad trends in that client from how they're running their business, and I wish I could just let it go, but I can't because I'm like, this, if you don't make that step, that right action, you might have to lay off 100 people in 6 months. And I would feel that personally. It would actually hurt my being if I knew I had an opportunity to go step in and do something. So I wish I had the opportunity to do that because frankly, I can tend to carry a lot of, especially dealing with so many clients we have right now. I feel pressure when I see their earnings and it's not where they needed to be. I feel pressure to how do I help them? Mm-hmm. So it's that I wish it's not a talent. I just wish I could let go of some of the things because I feel so much personal pressure to help people out.
That's because you're a good person. You answer the next question, so I'll skip over that one. Where would you most like to live?
My wife and I have always said we would love to retire once our boys are out of school to North Carolina. I love North Carolina. It's a great state. It's close enough. You get a little bit of everything. Being in Colorado, where I am right now, you don't get the ocean side. But just think North Carolina has the best combination of all the things, and the people are great, the food's great, the climate's great. You get beach, you get mountains, you get it's
phenomenal golf.
Yep. Tons of great golf, great cities, good airports. It's just a really nice place.
It is. What profession other than yours would you have liked to try?
That's an easy one. I wanted to be a physicist.
Interesting.
I had the path, and actually it's interesting because I have a son who is actually studying astrophysics. But I've always had a great passion for physics. To me, it's what everything in the universe exists of. And you can always find something new, and everything that we talk about that's the next generation of where we're going in the world, it all has to do with its fundamentals are in physics. So I would love to have been a physicist.
Interesting. Have you heard of Michio Kaku? He's an astrophysicist who one of the previous podcasts we had referenced to find his new book about the future of humanity. And I'll have to send you a link to it. It is an outstanding book. He is able to take tremendously difficult discussions and make them simple or make them understandable to everybody. But you're right. It is very interesting.
Yeah, I'm a Stephen Hawking fan.
He's brilliant. I don't always keep up with him. I think it's a testament to your mind that you can.
Yeah, he's got some very high concepts, especially when you start talking about physics and God.
This is very true. Joe, you have become the man for this next question. Do you want to take this one?
Blake, they give me the high-level questions here. Who is your favorite superhero?
I don't know if I have one. I do love things like the Marvel community and things like that. I will tell you the story. I don't know if I have a favorite. So this person is not, I would say, a favorite, but this goes back to caring. I stepped in for an organization once and I did some favors and got some organizations out of a big jam by helping them work through some technology issues and finding them suppliers. And it was interesting. I got an odd gift. It was the figure of Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have one. I love the entire Marvel universe. In fact, last night I flipped on Doctor Strange another time just to watch it. So I don't have a favorite, but I'd say the Star-Lord figurine is in my office somewhere.
That's great. What is your favorite sound?
That's easy. I'm a dog person. The sound of my dog's claws click-clacking over hardwood floors, which means they're coming to play. I can hear it, and it's funny. I will wake up at night because our dogs sleep in our bedroom on the floor, and if one of them gets up and starts walking around at night, I can hear that sound, and I perk up, and I go. So it's that little pitter-patter of those claws hitting on a hardwood floor just makes me go, hey, they want to play.
That is a great answer. And finally, what is the thing you most want to be known for after you've gone?
Caring for people. Whether it's what I've been able to do professionally, I've mentored a lot of people, both in high school, some in college, but also a lot of professionals. One of my biggest prides is when somebody who's worked for me or worked in an organization or worked with me maybe has been downsized for some odd reason, that I'm one of the first people to reach out to because they know I will do whatever I can to help them. If a neighbor asks me to do something, I'm going to jump through a ring of fire to try to help them. So I think if I'm known for that, then I've left a good impact on this earth.
That is a fantastic place to end this. It is clear that is a huge part of your ethos. It's what you've lived, it's what you've built, and that's obviously where AIQ is going. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to say before we wrap, but we thank you tremendously for joining us, and we are thrilled to have these conversations with our customers to help them understand more about AuctionIQ.
Thank you for the time. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Blake.
So that brings us to the end of today's conversation. Thank you for joining us. We know you have a million podcasts to choose from, and we really appreciate you giving us a chance. If you'd like to learn more about any of the solutions we offer, please reach out to us at info@mtmg.eu. Don't stress about writing all that down, though. All of this info will be in the show notes for you. Please subscribe to our podcast, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. If today's discussion resonated with you, please consider giving us a 5-star review. Your feedback not only supports our show, but also helps others find us. And if you think someone you know would appreciate this episode, please don't hesitate to share it. If you have any other comments, suggestions, or you'd like to be featured on a future episode, please email us at podcast@mtmg.eu. Lastly, don't forget to follow us on social media. But to spare you that long list of letters, just head to our website and follow our links from there. Thank you so much for listening to MTMG's IT Roundtable. We look forward to bringing you more conversations soon. Until then, take care, and know our team is always here to help. Sláinte.
MTMG, guidance that empowers.